Welcome everyone to our next instalment of our webinar series with iGaming Africa. Obviously this one is quite a special one because it is actually on the ever-evolving role of women in gaming. Just wanted to do a quick formality here. Obviously we want to give credit to our sponsor for this webinar, which is Digitane. If you don't know Digitane is a global leader in the provision of award-winning sports betting and gaming platform technology since 1999. And of course, because there are 4 women on this webinar, it is also supported by Women in Gaming Africa, which is a platform dedicated to empowering and connecting accomplished women in the gaming industry. And as we all know, this is organised by iGaming Africa, Africa's leading casino, sportsbook and lottery insider for news, interviews and other gambling industry updates. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce myself. I am Lois Bright. I wear many hats, but the 2 that I would like to speak about today is obviously that I have been in the industry recruiting for the best part of 15 years in the African gaming market. And so myself, I've seen the evolving role of women in the industry. And joining me are 3 other ladies. We are just waiting for Marsha to reconnect. But I'm going to hand over to Sipindile first to introduce herself, and then we'll hand over to Catherine, hoping Marsha joins by that point.
Hi, my name is Sipindile Msani. I am a customer success manager with Chiron Interactive. My experience within the industry, I have worked with some of big operators like Hollywood Bets, 10Bet, but my career, I'll say, started as I did study sports management in the Durban University of Technology. It's an industry I love, an industry that I'm really excited to be in, and I'm excited to be here to share some insights on my experience. Yeah.
Great, thanks so much, CP. And then Marsha, we're going to hand over to you.
Hi there, apologies for that. Some reason it cut out. But yeah, I'm Marsha Lynn Harris. I'm currently employed at the Western Cape Racing Board. I've had about 23 years of experience in the industry thus far, starting in the year 2000 as a trainee dealer at one of the first casinos that were licensed in the Western Cape. From the beginning, I've just loved this industry. I've loved the culture. I've loved the excitement. So I've just been keeping on going for 23 years. I moved over to the board based on my experience in the industry, and it was a good transition for me. I was able to do so much with the knowledge that I gained at the casino because I worked in the surveillance department and I was doing auditing in the surveillance department at the time. So yeah, I'm really excited to speak about the evolution of women in gaming, especially because I've evolved to the extent that I have currently. So yes. I'm excited to hear from the other panelists.
Great, thanks, Marsha. And then we're handing over to you, Catherine. And just want to make a special note, everyone. Catherine is actually in the US of A, and so it's like 3 a.m. for her. And she's looking amazing. So I'm going to hand over to Catherine to tell us about her journey, because obviously she's out of Africa, but she is African.
Yes, thank you, Lois. My name is Catherine of Somali. Good afternoon to you guys. This morning to me. I work in group sales at the Rio Las Vegas. And my journey to gaming has been a bit different because I came into gaming through my academic qualification. I graduated from my master's degree in gaming law and regulation at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And through that is how I've been able to go into the industry. And I think some of you may have seen my story. It was shared in the group and I saw all your messages. So I just wanted to formally say thank you to everyone who sent their messages. And even though I live in Vegas and work in Vegas right now, I'm Tanzanian. So I am born and raised in Africa. And I went to college at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban, South Africa. Had many achievements there. I graduated cum laude from my bachelor's degree in philosophy, politics, and law, and then I did my law school. And I also was a tutor at the University of KwaZulu-Natal for 1 year. So Tanzania and South Africa have a special place in my heart, definitely. But what excites me about being here is connecting with all the women in the gaming industry in the entire Africa, not just the countries that I've lived in. And I couldn't be happier to be here.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And that was a real crescendo because, I mean, yeah, what a journey. And we'll definitely get onto that a bit later into the webinar. So I'm going to kick off with I suppose the first question, which is a punchy one, because I'd like to know what hurdles or obstacles you faced, up until this point in your career. So I'm going to hand over to Marsha, because you've just mentioned, you've been in the industry for over 20 years. And obviously in that time you've grown and changed and evolved. So I'd love to know, what hurdles or obstacles have you faced personally in your career within gaming? We've lost Marsha. Okay, so this is live. This is what live TV is all about. I mean, I know it's not TV, but it's a webinar. So, okay, Marsha, you're back. Did you hear the question?
I heard the question. I've heard everything.
You go.
So the question was related to the hurdles. So basically, yes, I have been here for many years, and I've progressed and built a family in the time that I've been in the gambling industry. So while it might not be a hurdle, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to have children while you're working shifts in the casino operation. But you need a good partner. You need a good support system. So that for me was what got me through those times when I was working 8 night shifts and I wasn't off on weekends. So if you want to be in this industry, you really need to know that is the challenges you have to make. Luckily, at the board, there's less work, shift work. You do go away at times. So it's a little bit easier, but still the challenge is to remain relevant and to remain educated in what you actually are doing at the casinos. Um, that for me, I'm not sure if I'm still everybody can still hear me. So that for me was my major personal challenges. Also, moving from the license holder to a regulated environment where everybody has education. They've got their articles, they've got accounting degrees, and I came from the casino where that wasn't necessarily required to do your job well. As a dealer, I got training, I knew what I needed to do. In surveillance, you get training. So now I was faced with a challenge where I needed to be honest with myself and say, I needed to study. I needed to upskill myself to be able to do the function required from the board. Currently, I have my MBA, and that's gone throughout my years at the board. I've been studying little by little to get up to standard that I felt I can do justice to my experience in the industry and to what is required of me. With that, I think when you look at the demographics within the casino at the time that I was younger, the operation was operated by male managers. And coming in and having to deal with these men that went through all the years, they came up through the ranks from the count room sometimes, and they knew everything about gaming. And coming to them, from my perspective, was a challenge, not an obstacle, because I just needed to win them over. I needed to show them that I'm professional, that I know what I'm talking about, and that all goes with preparation. So I think all the obstacles or challenges we have can be mitigated with preparation. So for me, those are just a few things I went through throughout the years.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think what's really impressive about your career as well is when you look, you came in at a very sort of like entry level role within the tables and slots, and now here you are heading up a whole department at the regulator. So, obviously from your personal journey, you have evolved in those 20 years. I wonder, do you think that in parallel industries, you would still be afforded the same opportunities, or do you think that in gaming, we are actually afforded many more opportunities because there is so many opportunities within the industry? Do you think that's part of where the role of women has evolved?
I would agree to an extent. I think in gaming, it's much more about how you conduct yourself. I think reputation is key in gaming. Well, the regulator, it is basically a government organization. And amongst other regulators, I think we do develop our reputations, and that allows us to move internally and between different organizations. I think that yes, that would be the case. I don't know if other industries operate that way, but the reputation is definitely key, and you need to keep yourself very clean and very knowledgeable, and just keep on going on, and then people will get to know you, and people start taking interest in you, and then you can move on.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing is, I mean, given the fact that you've been in the industry for 20 years, it's obviously kept you in the industry because, some people would move in and out of industries and change industries. But I think given the fact that you've been in the industry for 2 decades, I can't see that you're going to be leaving anytime soon. So I guess there's there's also the fact that you've stayed within the industry, which is maybe kudos to the fact that there are those opportunities and there is that opportunity for growth. And, you know, like I say, you're in this very senior position at one of the most influential regulators. And it's, yeah, I think it's kudos to you that you've obviously climbed the ranks really quickly. So I'm hoping we might have Sippy and Catherine, but we seem to have lost them. So this could be a two-man show, Marsha. So there's Catherine. Brilliant. Catherine, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. So, you know, obviously with the evolving role of women in the industry, I know that you're very, very new into the actual working side of things. But how would you say, you know, how would you say that you are received within the US market, given the fact that you've got this background of being from Africa, but you've got this master's that you've finished in the US and the University of Las Vegas? Do you think there are lots of opportunities for women in the US who might be coming from Africa? Do you think there are opportunities for women to enter in there, or do you think it's mainly because of your academic qualification that you're able to work there?
Thank you, Lois. That's a good question. And I feel like the answer to that is both. So I had a difficult time getting into the gaming industry because as a woman, you know, most women do not sports bet or we don't play slot machines. And so telling people that I want to work in the gaming industry is like, what's your experience? Where did you learn gaming? You know? So I feel like people started taking me more seriously when I got admission into the gaming law program, because now I had something to back up my interest and a qualification that was coming up. And so I think that has definitely opened up a lot of doors, because through the university, you get connections and you get to meet people in the industry. A lot of our professors were working in the actual industry, not just academics. I do not know any one of them who was just an academic. A lot of them were actually lawyers or regulators. And so that is definitely an opportunity to kind of get that. You're not only getting the theoretical knowledge, but you're also getting the practical knowledge. And I think there is a lot of opportunities for women in Africa who want to study gaming, given that UNLV has the only gaming law degree in the world. That just shows how hard it is to kind of get anywhere that will teach you gaming. And so I think, yes, if you're looking to have that academic qualification to back up your experience, it's a great place to come, and you'll be taken seriously, definitely, because it's rare knowledge.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Sippy now. So I love the fact that you mentioned you did your degree in sports, because I think that's also an arena that, you know, as Catherine just mentioned, is not the traditional arena we find ourselves in. And so do you think that doing that degree has springboarded you into the sportsbook industry because the people that were hiring you were seeing the fact that you had a real interest in sports? And do you think it has been really helpful to have that degree to be in the industry you're in?
Yeah, definitely. So when I look at my time while I was still studying, for example, there weren't a lot of us females in our class, in our graduating class. There was not a lot of us. But it was a little bit difficult getting into the industry with just the qualification, but without the experience. But what I can say is I was really lucky when I was afforded a chance to actually join at an entry-level position with Hollywood Bets, where I was afforded a chance to actually learn and understand about the industry and learn more about the industry in an entry-level position, which has actually helped me, together with my qualification, to actually find ways to actually grow within the industry. So yeah, so I do think that my qualification has also played a vital role in showing that I have an interest in the industry, I have an interest in sports, but also just hand in hand with just applying myself and working hard has definitely helped me in that regard. Yeah, definitely.
Question for you. So do you think that, given the fact that you're now working at, you know, Chiron's obviously worldwide renowned for, you know, the virtual sports, esports, you know, so virtual games, do you think that are you seeing, I don't know whether from your side, whether you actually have access to this kind of information, but are you seeing more women players coming into the industry? And is that impacting where a business like Chiron is taking their product offering?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think where you look at what the female punter likes, for example, as much as our virtual started off as more of racing products and football products, we're now also evolving on our end, where we're providing instant games that we know that will favor more by females more than your male punters. But also even with the dealings, because I'm more in client relationship management, and even with the clients that I deal with, it's also nice to see where I'm interacting more with females, which is a great thing. So there is definitely growth. We are heading in the right direction in that regard, where we do see more females in the industry, but also we do have a lot of female punters also in the industry that will love your number games, they'll love your instant games where they will receive instant winning, whether it's casino games, where it's slots and stuff like that. So we do see that there is a growth in the industry that will favor more females, and we are also heading in that direction. We are at Chiron, where we're creating those games that will also cater to females more, female players more. Yeah.
So then, last question on this topic. So, do you think that a business like Chiron or any sports businesses, because you've obviously worked at other sports businesses, do you think that they are then tapping into the fact that actually by hiring more women into the industry, they're then able to tap into that market of, obviously there being this big, upliftment of women who are actually betting. They're actually going on, there are more women now that are accessing betting sites, and they're actually playing, whether it's esports or virtual sports, or whether it's traditional gaming or gambling. Do you think that businesses are actually starting to see that it makes sense to hire more women to then enable to tap into this women's psyche to be able to then impact the product offering?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've actually been very lucky. So like with our CEOs also, they are actually allies of actually hiring women. And I know my CEO is really excited about women in gaming. He encouraged me to actually be part of it also. Yeah, so definitely we do see that there is a growth within the industry, within our business also with females. I remember we did have a conversation while preparing for this webinar where we've seen the growth in hiring, where there's been more women in the business as compared to when it first started. So yes, definitely we are moving in the right direction in that regard, where we are seeing more women within the industry and more women also within Chiron and the virtual space, because that is the direction that women, with the business is taking and the industry is taking. But if I also look at my experience working in teams, if there's one thing I can say to businesses is that women work extra hard because we like to prove ourselves. We will actually go the extra mile all the time because we want to prove ourselves. So definitely businesses are hiring more women, and we're seeing a growth with women in the industry. We're seeing women, like, for example, you look at from our top 50, for example, where you've got Taryn Kendall, who's heading South Africa for Pragmatic Play. You've got Haley Joseph, who's the Director of Operations for WA Technology. Sandy Siwe is a GM at Betika. These are the women that we're looking at, and we're even having more role models at this moment, which is really good for us also that are still growing. But yeah, so it's really great to see that growth with having more women in the industry.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, definitely. Okay, it's interesting to hear that. I'm just going to quickly say, audience, if you want to start putting any questions out, because these are quite loaded conversations we're having. If you have questions, please start putting them into the box, and we can all see them, so we can start answering. But I'm going to move on to the next kind of topic now. So, I suppose, I'd like to understand what your experience has been from a perspective of how it's evolving. I'm going to pass this over to you, Marsha, because we've kind of touched on it already. But obviously you're seeing it from the regulator perspective. It'd be really interesting to understand how the regulator views the women punter or views the license holders. And I'd love to also know, have we had any female license holder applications? I don't know whether you would know that, but that could be quite interesting to see whether or not we're also seeing a change in the operator side of things.
Yeah. I don't actually have data that would support that assumption, but I would think it would be the case. Looking at the casino industry, one of the license holders actually has had so far three female GMs, and at that same unit, the technical manager is a female, which for me speaks to breaking down doors into positions that are usually male dominated. So that's very positive to see. I would ask my license department about applications for female business owners. But besides that, I maybe first from the license holder side, there's a lot of training and developing going on. And I think from when I was there, there wasn't, it was the beginning and it wasn't really as ingrained as it is now, but with the learnerships happening and all the opportunities for development, I can see a future where there are going to be more females stepping into more leadership roles. Because I think a lot of times we lead from behind or under. We are the backbone of the operation. We are the go-to people. It's just that maybe we don't get over that notch of being in the actual position that maybe would appear better or would be more beneficial to our future development and careers. And from the regulator side, I've seen across the board so many women moving into very good positions, executive positions on boards. I mean, our board has good female representation.
Yeah.
It's just that it's the board is part of the industry, but also part of government. So I know in the Eastern Cape, our officials are very pro just development. So I can see a future where there are more females walking into such roles because of the opportunities that's being provided.
Yeah, I think you brought up something really interesting there about from an educational perspective. And I think that's where it's interesting having Catherine on this call, because of course, Catherine's mentioned that, the University of Las Vegas is one of the only universities. You said it was the only university to offer the Masters in Gaming. Is that what you said? Or was it Masters in Gaming Law?
Yes, the Masters in Gaming Law.
Okay, because I actually just found out yesterday, this is a small anecdote, but it's interesting to think. I had a call with my an alumni association from the university I attended 20 years ago, and they just told me, and I found this out last night, and I was just bowled over, that they have opened up an esports arena. They were the first Hamilton Russell University to open up an esports arena. Where I was like, wow, okay, this is amazing news. So it was interesting to hear. But they've also just launched a gaming masters. It's not gaming law though, but it's gaming masters. So it's interesting to see that there are now universities that are starting to see that actually diversifying their portfolio of offerings to keep up with what the demand is. So it'll be interesting to see whether more universities follow suit. I'd love to know, Catherine, what do you think is the benefit of you now doing a gaming specific law, masters in law? Like, how do you think that's going to impact your career? Like, irrelevant of whether you already had a law degree, whether you're admitted, as an attorney or an advocate, do you think that the gaming law masters is now going to propel you much further into the industry, specifically because you have that very specific knowledge?
Yes, Lois, absolutely. I do think this is a very helpful accolade to have, because not only is it rare, right? You do not get a lot of people who have a gaming law degree, and not many universities, as you mentioned, offer it at all. And so just to be able to say, I have this degree, first shows you're interested, right? It shows that this is what you want. You went a long way to travel either outside the country or to go through, seek out a university that actually has it. So I think that alone makes people kind of think, okay, this person is interested in this industry and she's serious about being in the gaming industry. And secondly, I think, yes, definitely, because the university doesn't just give you the certificate saying you did a gaming law degree, but more than that, it's more you get the connections. So being here in Las Vegas, I've met Megan, who is also from South Africa. She's also an African lady who is an executive director at the International Center for Gaming Regulation. I've met people from across the world, people from Malta, people from Ghana, people from Uganda. So it also gives you those networking opportunities in case you also want to go back to Africa, or you want to go to a different location, jurisdiction. You can always meet people through the university, because a lot of people come to study here, a lot of people come to network here. And I also think we through the degree you get an opportunity to do an externship or internship. And so I did mine at Konami Gaming, and what was interesting is the senior vice president of compliance there was a woman, and the entire compliance department, was full of women, me included. And that was really beautiful to see how it's been evolving, how many women right now are being more and more engaged in the gaming industry. And I think we're heading in the right direction.
I'm going to agree with you there. And actually, I'm going to go back to something you mentioned, because we've got an audience member who, Naledi, has asked us about networking. And you mentioned about the fact that it's not just, which we all know, with, you know, when you go and study at university, sometimes the extra curricular activities that you get up to are actually the ones that springboard you into other opportunities. So you mentioned something about the networking, which I think is really interesting. I'd actually like to throw this out to all the ladies. So whoever wants to jump in on this one, how important do we think it is to actually be networking within the industry? So whether it's going to the likes of the ICE or the SBCs or the G2Es or the local market bigs or Sigma Africa, for example, do you think that those are also key and important to our role, not just evolving personally, but for women in the industry being seen and heard? What do we think about that? I don't know who wants to jump in and answer between the
I
three
can
of you.
jump in.
Okay, cool.
Yes, I think networking is just as important as your qualifications and experience. No one is going, you could be doing the most amazing job, but no one is going to know about you unless you put yourself out there, unless you meet people and tell them what you're doing and tell them about your qualifications. For example, myself, I got a job straight out of college, and that's because I networked. I met the hiring manager for my job at one of the events, and she remembered me when I graduated, and she said, "Hey, we have a position opened up, and please apply." And I applied, and that's how I got the job. And so a lot of people I graduated with have the same qualifications. So how do you distinguish yourself? It's by letting people know that I exist, by talking about your qualifications, by meeting people. That is the most important. I think it's just as important as your experience and as your knowledge.
I think I agree with you there. Marsha, I saw that you wanted to jump in too. Do you want to give your thoughts on this?
Definitely. I totally agree with you, Catherine. If people don't know you, they don't know what you can do. The challenge, I think, is that not everybody gets opportunities to go to international conferences or even local conferences to create that network of people. So whatever projects I think people in the industry, especially women, get involved in, to make sure, as I said before, your reputation speaks for itself. To make sure that you leave your name on the table so that when people walk away, they take it with them to their places of work. I found that every opportunity I've had in whatever aspect of my jobs I've done before, I've always, like I think CP said, that you need to do it to the best of your ability. Women do things harder and more than because you want to do the right thing. You want people to know that you put in that extra mile. So I think the reputational aspect is very important. The network is very important, but when you can't network on that level where your companies may be paying for you to go to these conferences, I think LinkedIn helps tremendously because when you interact on LinkedIn, it starts showing you what you are interested in, and you start commenting on what you're interested in. And like-minded individuals and experts will be on that same platform as you, and this is how you also build your network because more people that like and do the same thing you do are now also connecting you and talking to you and maybe finding in that network of large network, you find a few people that you actually connected on a more personal level because at the end of the day we're all people and we connect as individual people, but that individual people can take you to different networking opportunities. I was at a business conference and the dean of UCC, I think, was one of the speakers, and she took the diagram of how you can be the connector of different networks, and that can be your network. So you don't necessarily have to go and tell everybody about what you can do, but you can connect to people that you know are very good. So, for example, if I say CP and Catherine are amazing, they can do things for each other. I know both of them, I connect them, and that in itself creates a network. And I posted on LinkedIn about it because I think a lot of people undervalue the fact that they are connected by just connecting people. And that's my contribution to that part, just knowing that everything you do in your job is a reflection of yourself. And hopefully people will be able to see that and carry it with them into the next position or into the next project that maybe your name comes up. And it's not maybes, because if you do something well, it will definitely come up.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And I think that's one of the reasons, obviously, the Women in Gaming Africa community that we've built is so important because we can open up opportunities for one another. And, you know, we can network with people we had no access to before. And actually, Jeremiah did ask me to make a special mention on this. I just wanted to say congratulations to all of the women that were listed in the top 50. I think that that is also a really good way to propel yourself in the industry because, you know, it did have, there were people in that list I didn't even know, and I've been in the industry for 15 years. And I'm sure that there were many people that then didn't know people, and it was a good way to start networking. And like you say, Marsha, it doesn't have to just be physical events. You know, LinkedIn is a great networking tool for us to connect with one another. So I just want to get onto the next topic because I'm conscious that this has been such an awesome conversation. I haven't even got down to some of the questions. So I wanted to ask, do we think, and this is a good one because of having Kat, which is why we put Catherine onto the call, in fact, do we think that this is unique to Africa? Do you think that Africa is doing really well at what we're doing? Because I think there was a stat that I read recently, or at least relatively recently, that said the industry in Africa is made up of 51% women. So we're obviously doing something right. And, you know, obviously there are men that are supporting us. So do we think that our role in the industry and how we're evolving, do you think we're evolving at the right rate? You know, do you think that what's happening in the industry in Africa is representative of what might be happening abroad? Or like, what do we think? Catherine, I'd love to know what you think about that. And I'm going to come to you, CP, after this.
Yes, I think the gaming industry in Africa has done a really great job in just making sure that women are included. And I think part of that is, for example, in East Africa, I know we have a lot of sports betting, and that is very unique because being here in Las Vegas, sports betting is almost an afterthought, right? A lot of people here play slot machines, and it's just an accessory to have like a sports betting place in your casino because you don't want people to go sports bet at the next casino, but it's more as an accessory to the casino rather than a business in itself. But I think in Africa, we've done a really great job at just having sports betting as one of the biggest industries there. And I think it's the role of sports. We see a lot of women being more and more engaged in sports. And so getting that interest to want to play some money on their teams. And also in leadership, we see a lot of women being regulators. We see a lot of women getting hired to jobs in the gaming industry. You can see just in this Women in Gaming alone, we see Masha, we see CP, we see Lois, we see a lot of people. I know Megan was a regulator in Cape Town. So I know a lot of people in the gaming industry in Africa are more and more willing to let women in, which is a great trend. But I also see the same trend happening here in the US right now. A lot of executive positions are now held by women that I know of. And some departments are just fully women, especially when it comes to legal and compliance issues. And I think Masha and CP touched on this. Women are willing to go above and beyond to prove themselves. And I think people see that and they see the value in that because it was not just given to us. A lot of people do not think of women when they think of the gaming industry. So I think we do a great job at just showing that we belong here and we're here and we're going nowhere. And I think the world is trying to understand that and it's seeing that, and we're only going to see this trend get better and better.
Yeah, I definitely want to come back to your point on leadership because that's something I'm interested to look at, because of that 51%, I'd love to know who holds what roles in the industry. So we'll come back to that. But CP, I wanted to understand from you, you're obviously working in a very dynamic environment. You know, Chiron's obviously a global business, proudly South African. And as you said, you know, the co-CEOs are very behind the women in gaming side of things. Do you think that there are more access points for women now coming into sports? Because like you say, it's not traditionally something that we've had more women in, but do you think now, what do you think is impacting that? Do you think things like, you know, seeing all these amazing Olympians, you know, women Olympians winning, and, you know, there's a lot more, especially with the rise of social media, where we're able to access women sports stars, and there's a lot more onus on things like, we're not just looking at Springboks, we're looking at the alternative that's the women's rugby team, or, you know, these things are getting televised, these things are getting betted on. You know, it's not like, it feels as though it's becoming more inclusive. What would you say from working in the sports industry? Do you think we are becoming more inclusive as an industry? And do you think it's very unique to Africa, or what's your experience of maybe seeing what's happening in the wider business?
Yeah, definitely. So if I look first within just my the company that I work for, which is Caron, for example, like Catherine was mentioning earlier, I know, for example, if I walk into my compliance and legal team, that is strictly just females working in that department, and our finance team is also made up of mostly women, and then also you'll see with the commercial teams where it's 50-50, and we also have women in technical roles, which is amazing to see. But what has been amazing in witnessing, not just in Africa, but this has been a global thing, is that companies and the industry has been promoting and celebrating diversity in the industry, where we see a lot more of women being included, a lot of women holding these big roles and leadership roles, which is amazing. And also with companies like Initiate, where they also do promote women empowerment, also providing women a chance to actually participate in the industry and be part of the industry, and giving women chances in the industry also to grow, which has been amazing. So I've seen this not just in Africa, but also we're dealing with some of my clients that are based in Europe, where we can see that there is an inclusion of women and there are more women that are holding these leadership positions, which has been great for us to see, and that it's a direction that the industry is taking currently.
Yeah, it's interesting that the theme I'm seeing is that Catherine touched on it, Marsha touched on it, you've now touched on it, which is there are women in leadership roles, but they're often in certain silos. You know, you're saying like the legal compliance,
Yes.
it feels as though maybe there are roles that we as women might be better at holding, but it'd be interesting to see. And in fact, Dominique's put this question out, so I'm going to kind of link it into her question because I think it's a good one. It'd be interesting to see the makeup in other departments. Like, so Dominique's asked about game designers. I know that Dominique is a designer. What do we think about other areas? What are you seeing in other parts of the businesses? So in the traditionally more male-dominated, like product's a good one here. I mean, I know from working in a recruitment business, when we look at product roles, I would say it's, very, very few and far between do we find women, although Ananda, I know she heads up products for turf sport. But there are few women in certain silos. So Dominique's asking about game designers. Now, I know none of us are actually game designers, so we might not be able to answer this question. But what do we think about there being a push for women in non-traditional parts of the industry? Do you think that you're seeing that evolving, or do we think that we still need to do something more to kind of bring more women into more male-dominated parts of the industry? What do you think?
So for example, so we do design our games also here. So with our team, so the entire business for us is like 30% is made up, over 30%, maybe like 31% is made up of females. So we do have a few women in those roles, definitely. We'll have women in the development, we'll have women in game design, but it's not at the magnitude that we would all like, because of course women will occupy more marketing roles, more commercial roles, compliance, HR, but it would be nice to actually see women in technical roles too. So to grow the numbers that we currently have in those roles. So I think the best thing that I could maybe say or advise towards that is that we should see more women actually upskill themselves when they are in the industry, by actually taking those courses and actually learning and using whatever space they're in to their advantage to learn more, to actually move into those roles. So as much as we do definitely have some women in QA, that the whole development roles and technical roles and product team, but it's not at the magnitude that we would like as women. And hopefully we should see a growth in that as we see the industry moving into that direction.
Piece of advice, actually, because I think let's look at someone like Zena Rousseau, who heads up, she's the VP of Africa for BMM Test Labs. Like traditionally that kind of industry is very male dominated, and it'd be interesting to see, because obviously with game designers, which is what Dominique's asking about, like that is still quite technical. Yeah. So from that perspective, it's going to be interesting to see how that keeps evolving. Because actually, I'm going to move this back to you, Marsha. You started in the industry over 20 years ago. I think it's closer to 25 years ago. And, you mentioned about the fact that there were lots of men who were already in the industry that you were like learning from, and you were coming in and you felt like you were coming in and you weren't necessarily an equal at that point. I wonder what it would be like back in a land-based casino right now. I think that there's quite a lot of female leadership now in those businesses. What do you reckon? I mean, I'm presuming you've still got some, you've still got inroads back there because obviously your role at the regulator, you would be having sort of communication with these businesses. Do you think there's more women now in those more traditionally land-based positions?
Well, from what I see from the technical side, because obviously technical is where females don't naturally gravitate towards. I've seen a lot more technical people walking around, and they are females, and they're proud of what they're doing, and they're very knowledgeable. I see a lot of supporting roles still being played by females, and I think because of our nature, we need to hone into what we're good at. And if our strengths are in a certain field, I think we shouldn't fight against it. I think we should go with what we naturally skilled at doing and what our affliction is towards. So if it's a marketing department, it's nothing wrong with being a female that's proud of being in the marketing department, or finance or HR, which is where you technically find more females. I just think that it starts with what you want to do and how you feel you want to progress in your career, and just being prepared for the sacrifices you may make. I think maybe people that are just starting out, the entry level positions like slots, attendants, and table game dealers. Those are entries into the game industry, and at that time you can see where you want to position yourself, and then of course just be prepared. I can't talk enough about preparing for when that role comes up, or when that position or that project comes up. If you know what you want to do, you need to work towards it. And unfortunately, developing the skills required some sort of training or some sort of education to back you, because like previous panelists have said, experience only gets you so far, skills only get you so far, but when you combine your skills, experience, and the book knowledge that you have, then you're forced to be reckoned with. So I think if females feel more comfortable in certain sectors of the industry, they should feel free to do that. There should be no pressure to dominate certain areas, because we all have our natural talents, and I think women are very intuitive. They are good team leaders because they understand people's personalities. They've got good emotional intelligence. So maybe there are sectors that we're just going to excel in, and that's okay. Just moving forward, not having barriers put in place where we can't get into the areas where women do feel more comfortable, and where maybe if you are someone that loves game designing, not just having that barrier where because you're female you can't enter it. I think that is what the focus should be on, and that is maybe where we should move, where we should have people, mentors, and people that really understand the challenges they went through, and opening up the doors to the women that feel they want to do it. Because it's maybe not a lot of us, but some of us that want to do it should get the opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think actually I'm just going to go to another question that Zoe's put in here. She's asked about allies, and I think that's one thing that we probably haven't touched upon here, and I think it'd be really important to talk about. I'm sure that we're talking, obviously this whole webinar is talking about the evolving role of women in the industry, but we cannot ignore the big elephant in the room, which is that there will be many men that have been our allies. There will be many men that have helped us get to where we've got to. So, what can we do to make sure that we are also giving back, that we are not, we're not kind of making it a male-female thing. We're trying to see how we can integrate. What do we think in terms of how we can engage? This is what Zoe's asked. What do we need to do to engage and inspire male advocates? Who would like to answer that question? CP, Catherine, one of you maybe?
I can answer it. I think the most important thing, especially in an industry that is very specialized, is just talking about it. Because I do not think any kid grows up saying, I'm going to become a gaming regulator or I'm going to become a game designer. These are roles that you can only think of when you see someone doing it, or when you're growing up and someone has talked about it, maybe attended a webinar like this, and someone will say, I'm a game designer, and you're like, oh, that's a thing, So these are roles that we in the industry should always publicize. We should always speak up. I think this platform is a great one to just tell people, hey, these are the other roles that you could take. You don't have to be in legal or compliance. You can do game design, right? You can always, I think, yeah, the first thing is to just make sure we get as much exposure to the industry as possible, and just let people know that they're allowed to come into the industry. They can rely on us to guide them, and they can rely on us to tell them what we did to get in here and be successful in this industry. So I think the most important thing is for us in the industry to just spread the word out, and always remember the way people helped us get in here. People mentored us to get in here, both women and men. I have a lot of male mentors, myself. And so just to make sure that we also hold someone's hand and make sure they come in here as well.
Just going to quickly say now before I forget that we obviously are doing a top 50 most influential men in gaming, which is running for nominations until next week, Wednesday. So please, anyone in the audience, and of course us on the panel, please do nominate the men in your lives that have been instrumental in you getting to where you've got to in the industry. Because I do think that we also need to show that we are allies of our men in the industry. This is not just about them being allies to us. So on that point, I think we're going to go to our last question. Then we are going to have a look and see, summarize, and then we'll go and see if there's more questions we want to answer. So just on the last kind of question, where do we see us moving? Like, where do we see we've got to this point of where we are now. What's next? Where are we going? Like, where are we moving towards? What do we need to do to uplift more women? How do we need to bring more women into the industry? How do we need to make sure that we keep women in the industry? Because obviously you do see people that come in, they have a great career somewhere, and then they end up leaving and going into either a parallel industry or completely out of the industry. What can we do to move forward and evolve more? I'm going to put that question out to Marsha to start off with, and then we'll move around.
I think it's a two-part situation. Africa is blowing up in the sense of gaming. I think so international wants to enter Africa from whichever continent or whichever part of the country they want to. So it could be South Africa, to Nigeria, wherever. So when these things happen, there's amazing opportunities for people to be at the ground level of creating something amazing. And for us females, I think it's to prepare ourselves from education standpoint from high school. We need to from high school have this understanding of having our maths and accounting, being diverse, and then be prepared for when opportunities come in, we can put our hand up. In my experience, if I hadn't studied when I did, I would have never gotten the position that I got at the board at the time as a senior. So you just have to really prepare yourself to be able to be at the next step, able to put your hand up. And obviously the networking is very important. So I think going forward with the development of Africa, females are just really going to develop with Africa, develop with sports betting and land-based casinos and any other betting. And that's my contribution to that. I just think we are inevitably going to move forward, and for everyone to decide where they want to move forward, in which aspects they want to move forward, and then put plans in place and make the right connections so that you can move your agenda along with whatever is happening in Africa at the moment.
Yeah, great advice there, definitely. CP, what do you think?
I think when we're looking at the industry, it's so fast growing. It's a very fast paced industry. And I think for me, when I think about where the industry is heading, where I believe that we're going to have more women in leadership. But I think in general, for everyone, whether male or female, it's one thing that I've realized in my experience working with operators at operators end, where the teams at entry level positions, like your customer service teams that are dealing with the customers, and mostly would be the people that are demotivated the most, where they don't feel like there are opportunities for them to grow. But I think if there's one thing that I can maybe just say is that you actually need to realize that the position that you're in is an advantage, because that's where you deal with everything about the business. That's where all of the information is coming in. So you know more about the business than other people in different departments who would be dealing with just something that is specific to whatever they're dealing with. So I think if I look at where the industry is leading, I think it's really important for people at entry-level positions to then make sure that they use that time and use that space that they're in to their advantage. Understanding that there are opportunities that are available with networking, mentorship programs, upskilling yourself, learning more about where you're wanting to head, and then definitely take that to an advantage of you growing in the industry, because there's so many opportunities. There's always a new game and always a new operator opening up. So there's a lot of opportunities in our industry, and it's going to be a growing one, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's definitely great advice too. And then Catherine, you from your side, because obviously you're uniquely positioned where you are.
Yes, if I would have one, I'm very optimistic about the future. I think a lot of women have paved way for us. Masha has been here for 20 years, so definitely we have seen that we have role models we can look at and say, hey, this is possible, right? We can do this as women. And so I'm very optimistic. But also, if I had one advice going forward in terms of moving your career forward, would be women to be more assertive in the workplace. instead of taking a more passive role. Most women we work very hard and we put everything into our work, but we do not talk about it enough. We do not highlight ourselves enough. We just sit down, and nobody's going to know how much you're doing if you do not tell them what you're doing. So just make sure people are aware of you, people are aware of what you network, talk to people, talk to your boss, talk to different departments, let them know your value, right? And then that way, when people have positions coming up, they're going to think of you instead of just being passive and thinking someone will notice me, because a lot of times people are very busy and move on. So my advice would be more assertive.
Yeah, okay, that's also great advice. I'm actually going to head to the questions. I was thinking we'd do a summary, but I think let's head to some of the questions because there's been some really interesting ones here. So I'm just going to quickly head down and have a look. So I'm going to go to Jeffrey and Gully have said similar kind of things. Like, so the evolution essentially of sports. Okay, we can see the question live on screen here. Do you see the evolution of women's sports like WBNA as a driving factor that influences the growth of women in gaming? From participation in sports and betting to inclusion in the industry. What do we think? Do we think that what actually happens live in the sports arena has an impact back inside our industry? And do you think we need to, going into Gally's question as well, we maybe need to see how we can have a closer allegiance with the actual sports industries? I know that we've got like, Betway, who's now, taken over quite a few of the big sports, like the soccer premiership, now Betway premiership, so there is that link, but that's obviously just from a sponsorship perspective. What do we think in terms of the actual industry, the sports arena being more closely aligned with what we're actually doing, and how could that impact us? I don't know whether CP, maybe you want to look at that one because you're the sports aficionado here.
No, definitely. I think so. When we talk about like the disparities, a lot of things when it comes to gender in the sports industry and the iGaming industry, it's very common. But we've seen now where there's a spotlight on female sports, basically. For example, tennis is a great example, my favorite sport, where we are seeing now that women are actually earning equally as men in the industry. And then also, as much as we look at how female sports like the WBNA, for example, is also slowly taking that direction, which I feel is overall, we're seeing that everything is moving in that direction where more women are being supported, women are being put in the spotlight to actually grow and evolve in whatever industries that they're in, which I think that does have an effect on what is happening, whether it's in corporate or whether in our industry also, where we're seeing the relationship between getting that spotlight onto women's spectator sports is also being reflected on our industry too, which is a great thing, definitely.
Yeah, and I see Gully's also had another question here about the VIP. There's obviously, we were talking earlier about certain areas not having, women in the industry, and I think Gully's making a good example here. I think this is the thing about the evolution. Do you notice that sometimes there's dips, ebbs and flows? Yes. And there were women in VIP like maybe 10 years ago, and then as it's evolved, less women have stayed in the VIP side of things and they've moved out. Now there's much more, male, it's more male dominated. Do you think that from an evolution perspective, we will see more women going back into the parts of the industry where maybe they've backed out of because, maybe it's got, I don't know, I'm just going to throw the gauntlet out here. Maybe there's some areas have notoriety that stops women from wanting to go into it. Because one topic we haven't really talked about, which Marsha touched upon, is going to conferences. There's definitely a lot of women representation when you go to conferences. I mean, I was at Lisbon SBC last week, but I didn't see lots of African women. I didn't see lots of African representation. And do you think that is because businesses are not sending women to conferences, or do you think it's also just the nature of the fact that it's difficult to get literally to get to these conferences, whether it's from a flight and accommodation and cost perspective, or whether it's about visas? Do you think that we need to have more representation of women at conferences from an African perspective? And do you think that will then impact where we evolve to? I'm going to throw that out to all of you, but I'm going to say Catherine first. What do you think? Because you're over in a completely different continent to us right now.
Yes, I think it's very difficult to get out of the country coming to these conferences because a lot of things, right? It's financial issues, immigration issues. You have to get a visa, you have to get your flights and whatnot, and you have to get time off or get your company pay for you. And a lot of companies are still not willing to send people out, maybe because they do not know the value of the conferences, or it's just a lack of awareness generally. So I think it's very hard to meet people from Africa in these conferences. We have G2E here in Las Vegas, and people from all over the world usually gather. And I think it's a few weeks away right now. But then a lot of times you go there and there's no one from Africa. You barely see anyone from there. And I think those are the networking opportunities we're missing, because when you come here, you meet people, you understand how the industry not just works in Africa, but how it's evolving throughout the world. And I think it's a call for employers and regulators to kind of see the importance of sending people to these conferences. Even if it's in Africa, you don't have to send people to Las Vegas. Even if something is happening in Kenya, it's happening in Nigeria. You could always just have a budget for it and say, hey, we're sending one or two representatives to just see what's happening in these conferences and network. And by that, I think that way you gain more knowledge than just sitting in the office and researching or doing stuff like that. So I would definitely say we need to start attending more conferences. That's a thing, and it helps.
Yeah. Okay. We're actually running out of time. I mean, this conversation could probably go on for another hour, to be totally honest. And we've had so many amazing questions coming from the audience. So thank you, audience. You have been amazing. I just want to see if I can give all of you 1 minute just to summarize, essentially, or what your thoughts are on the role of women evolving in the industry, what your advice would be, and really your closing remarks. So, Sipi, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay, thank you. I think in closing for me, I think it just goes back to, I think touching on everything that we've mentioned today, it's really important that if you're wanting to actually have a career in this industry and you're wanting to actually grow within this industry, it's really important, for example, starting to doing your research, understanding what is required, where you can grow if you're already in the industry, what opportunities there are available for you. And then, like everyone said, putting your hand up for stuff. Networking and actually getting to know, for example, for females like us, to actually get to know the women in the Women in Gaming group, for example, getting to know who the women are, even going into mentorship programs with any of the women there, just to learn as much as you can. It is an industry that is growing. I've always said it's an industry that I do not plan on leaving, because I know it's definitely growing. Definitely. So it's just basically getting yourself out there, getting yourself known, knowing the right people also, because networking is important, but also on your end, doing the necessary research and equipping yourself to be ready to actually grow into whatever role that you're wanting to grow into. I think that would what I could actually just provide in closing for anyone that's watching. Yeah.
Thank you, CP. Marsha, what about you?
In interest of time, I'm going to echo what CP says. It's absolutely right. You need to put up your hand. You need to be prepared, be at the right place at the right time. But I'm going to add to that that reputational capacity is so important to you. That is your currency in this industry. Unfortunately, not all of us can go to conferences, but find other ways of introducing yourself. The Women in Gaming Forum is an amazing platform to have, and there are many across the world that you can join without actually being there, but hearing about more things and connecting with people. Education also, it opens up doors, and it's the way it is, unfortunately. Even though you feel your experience speaks for itself, having that document that gives you entry into what next stage of your career is going to be is so important. So, ladies, be yourself authentically. Don't feel you have to be the queen bee. If you want to be the worker bee, if you want to be the supporting structure, be the supporting structure. Be the person everybody relies on. You don't have to be the head of the department. You can lead from behind. And if you have that confidence in yourself, I think we're all going to work very well together.
Yeah, that's great advice, Marsha. I really love that. And Catherine, what about you? Final closing remarks.
Yes, my advice would be just avoid being average. Always make sure you know what your skills are. Everybody has unique skills they bring to the table, and just look at your strength and always try to use them, and stop being complacent in the workplace, because that way it's hard to advance your career if people are not seeing your value. So I think it's always important to go an extra mile, by realizing this is what I bring to the table and show people that that's what you do and network. And that way you're always going to grow it because people are going to notice your work and people are going to notice your engagement. So that's my advice.
Yeah, also great advice. Well, thank you, ladies. You have been amazing. We've had so much engagement from the audience. It's been so, so good to have all of you here. I'm sure we could spend another hour doing this, but hopefully Jeremiah will give us another webinar at some point in the future. I just wanted to spend the last minute or so just quickly having a quick roundup on things. So yeah, look, I love this industry. There's no way I'm going anywhere. And I'm so inspired by everyone's stories and hearing everyone's route to market and what they're doing and how they're evolving and the businesses that are supporting them. But yeah, I just wanted to thank Digitain for sponsoring this webinar. And obviously we have been supported by Women in Gaming Africa, of which all of us are part of that community. Of course, it is iGaming Africa that basically facilitates this whole platform, which is amazing. And I want to do just one quick shout out for Jeremiah. He has just literally secured 2 or 3 hours ago, Africa Pulse Workshop by iGaming Africa on the 11th of November at Grand Hotel in Malta. So he's going to be at Sigma Malta, and he will be then running a panel that will be a session completely about Africa, which will be amazing. And so I just want to really say thanks so much for everyone joining us. Thanks so much for all the amazing questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them, but they were really insightful. I hope that some of us can log on and find out if we can contact you directly to answer some of these questions. And then let's just keep evolving. Let's keep evolving and let's keep progressing in an amazing industry that has so many opportunities. So thanks so much, everyone. And I hope you've enjoyed the webinar today, and we will see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.